Hey, it's time for another edition of Singles Only Podcast. What's up, Sols? Single only listeners. See what I did there? I'm trying to see if this will pick up SOLs, Sols. You know, everyone has their fan base, their listeners. I don't know, dude. I'm just coming up with shit here, dude. We're 300 some episodes in, and now I fucking have a name for listeners. Probably should have thought of that a while ago, but I'm not the brightest. This episode's fun. We have marriage expert and advocate Eric Wooten on this episode, advocating for marriage and why he believes in it and all its glory. So we have a nice chat. If you are listening to this, you can watch it on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Paul F Comedy. I've got shows coming up. Tonight, if you're listening to this on Sunday when it's released, is the big show that I'm excited for at Zanies, Parkinson's Foundation fundraiser that I started. I'm excited for it. Josh Sneed is headlining. I'll be there. Joe Antonacci, who also has Parkinson's. A very important cause to me. Please get your tickets if it's not sold out already. Tell your friends. It'll be a great show. We've got some raffles to give away. Front row tickets to the Cubs games in upcoming year. Gift cards to Sugar Factory, Pete's Dueling Pianos, and Zanies tickets as well. It's going to be a fun night. Please come out and tell your friends if you don't have your tickets already. Then I'll be on the road again. I will be in Indianapolis next week, Sunday, December 18th at the Helium, headlining that club. Excited for that. First time there. Please tell your friends if you know people in Indianapolis. And then I'll be in Skyline for New Year's with Renan Hirschberg, hilarious comedian. You should follow him if you don't already. Next year, I'll be in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Wichita, Kansas, Florida, as always, and hopefully have some stuff in Chicago to announce too shortly. So keep checking out on paulfcomedy.com for updates on shows I have coming up. And subscribe to this podcast if you like it. Give us a review if you haven't in a while or have never reviewed. Just give us a 5-star review. It helps tremendously to keep this free and also keep the algorithm going for me. Paul Farahvar on Instagram. Follow me there. Check out my YouTube page, which I already mentioned, and check out our sponsors, please. Hey, gang, I want to tell you about a new product called Nirvana CBD, premium and good tasting CBD products. If you know me, you know I'm a big fan and advocate for CBD. I've used CBD for its healing benefits on my injuries, as well as vaping CBD for a time when it just helped me clear my mind. Not the kind with THC, but the kind that just cleared my mind and kind of helped me with memory. Nirvana CBD is broad spectrum CBD. They're 100% hemp derived and made in the USA with high quality ingredients. They also contain 0 THC. They offer a wide selection of CBD products, including gummies, soft gels, topicals, tinctures, and pet care. Check them out at nirvanacbd.com. You will not be disappointed. Tell them I sent you. If you aren't using CBD for anything now, get on the CBD train. Use Nirvana CBD. Okay, I know it's all fun and games. My Better Call Paul spiels on stage, or my shirts that say Better Call Paul. Donating a lot of the money for charity, by the way. PaulFComedy.com, you can get your shirt, as always. But here's the thing. If you actually need a lawyer, you have to get professional help. So if you're injured on the job, you don't know what kind of compensation you're entitled to, or you're injured in a car accident. Don't handle something on your own, and don't call some random person that you see in commercials on daytime TV. Call someone that really knows what they're doing, someone that's helped workers who were injured for over 20 years in Chicago and beyond. My good friend, attorney Scott Shapiro. He is your man. Give him a call. Here's the thing. He also handles entertainment law, whether you're a comedian, a musician, a podcaster, a wrestler, an actor, anything. He's handled all these things for 20 years here in Chicago. He is your guy. Give him a call, 312-627-1650, or email him at scott@scottshapirolegal.com.
all consultations initially free of charge. Your first consultation is free. You have nothing to lose. Don't take any chances. Call my friend Scott Shapiro, 312-627-1650. Scott at scottshapirolegal.com. Tell him I sent you. You're welcome. Hey, all, it's time for another edition of Singles Only Podcast. My name is Paul Farahvar. If you're listening to this episode on audio, you could actually watch this on my YouTube page, which is youtube.com/Paul F Comedy. So SOLs, Souls, if you want to listen to that, that's the new name I came up, Singles Only Listeners. After 350 episodes, that's what I come up with. You're welcome. Anyway, this week we have a special guest. I know we shit on marriage on this podcast all the time. And so I decided to bring in a marriage expert who advocates for marriage and fixes marriages. He's got a company, Altered Marriage. I'll let him tell you more about it. Please welcome our guest, Eric Wooten. Eric? Hey, Eric.
Hey, what's going on? I was waiting for the applause to start, but it never happened, so I just came in.
We'll add that in post. So.
Okay.
So, Eric, I found you. I saw that you've got, you're an advocate. The site says you're an advocate for marriage. You push for marriage. Why? Tell us why.
Why not? I know it's so on my side. I'm like, when you reached out and I said singles only, first I thought it was like a setup. You know, I'm like, because usually singles only is like a dating app, a sex hookup site, like Yeah, and so I thought someone's trying to take down the marriage guy. But then when you said, "Hey, I do a podcast and we just, go after marriage," I'm like, "Let's do it. This sounds fun." So, I'm a marriage guy. Believe in marriage. Been through the ups and downs of a 28-year marriage. We've been through infidelity, infertility, mental health issues, adoption, difficult kid, you name it, right? The stuff that can tear marriage apart, but I just still believe in the relationship. I think a lot of people believe in it, and most people that are against it, it's usually out of place of either hopelessness or pain or frustration. And so, but maybe you can correct me on that. I'm a marriage guy, licensed counselor. I got an organization called Alter Marriage, just try to help both dating and married and premarital couples, just try to help people do relationship in a better way. That's really it.
Well, and when you give advice on for people dating or anything like that, do you think that marriage is for everyone, or is it something that it shouldn't be? I feel like it's pushed on hard in this society. It's a Puritan ethic. So the goal in life is to get married, procreate, and so on. Do you think that's healthy, or do you think that maybe some people aren't made to get married?
No, I think I think it's a choice, right? And I think, some people are, I think some people, if you're unwilling to do the things that are required to have a healthy marriage, I mean, it requires a high level of sacrifice and selflessness at times and compromise and different stuff. Some people are like, I'm unwilling to do that stuff. I'm unwilling to do the work it takes to have a healthy relationship. Then I'm all for those people. Don't get married. Don't.
No, but I think you can have a healthy relationship, but I feel like marriage sometimes the cons outweigh the pros, right? Because you just said it. It's a lot of work. You have to compromise, and a lot of people don't have that selflessness, or they're happy on their own. Like I like being by myself a lot. I enjoy my freedom. I enjoy being by myself, and so I don't think marriage is for me. But I feel like for years, marriage, if you were single, it was kind of frowned upon. People were like, "Ooh, what's wrong with Paul?" or something like that. Now it's a little more.
Can't get yourself somebody, huh? You have a hard time.
Right. Like we talked about that. So
so I guess my questions would be, so all the things that it almost sounds like you're saying, there's this pool of stuff that I really like being single, and to me, getting married means I've got to give up most or all of these things. And so I don't like that. But what if you found somebody that was similar to you, that also liked independence, that also, like, for instance, I know a couple that it's his second marriage, her first marriage, but they have homes in Texas and in California, and they generally spend a lot of time apart because they both work businesses. And so like when the pandemic hit a couple of years ago, that was the first time they had been together 12 days in a row.
Right.
Because so they travel a lot and it works for them because I think they both value some level of independence. The problem is if you value independence and you get in a relationship with somebody that needs closeness and intimacy and reassurance and all that kind of stuff, that's when you're like, dude, you're clingy, you're too much, this is exhausting, the expectations are overwhelming. But if you find somebody that wants the similar things you do, you may find, hey man, this works for us, and we don't have to be together all the time, and we don't have to be best friends and do everything together and never be apart, and some of the stories you hear. So some of it may be finding a relationship that works for you.
Right. But why does that relationship have to end in marriage? Why can't it just be a relationship that's like, why does something always have to go somewhere? Why can't it just like kind of
right? Why do we have to finalize it?
Correct. Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, it's because people in a relationship like that, where they're committing and giving up time, resources, that kind of stuff, want that level of commitment. I mean, statistics show that couples that cohabitate are less likely to get married and more likely to divorce if they cohabitate. And so there's just, cohabitation is a sort of commitment. Yeah, I'm sort of here, but we've got enough stuff independent that if I ever don't like you or this doesn't work out or you piss me off enough, then I'm gone. Whereas marriage feels a little bit more solid, like, hey, we've made a commitment, we're going to try to work through things. So I think a lot of people want marriage because there's a stability to it that does not exist in non-marriage cohabitation, dating, whatever you want to call it.
Well, you said that like if there's the fear in when you're cohabitating that they could just walk away. What's bad about that? If someone has that free will, I feel like with marriage, the reason why a lot of people end up staying together if they are unhappy or things are not working out is because of societal norms that put down divorce, right? The cost of divorce, and
Sure.
and so you're in a situation where it's like you want to leave. If someone wants to leave, doesn't that affect the marriage too? Like it's just you're staying together for the kids or whatever reason. Like I feel like that's not healthy either.
I mean, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Yeah, when you hear people say, well, we're just together for the kids, like it's this big negative thing, it may be negative for your present happiness.
Right.
But when we say staying together for the kids, there's a whole bunch of value, statistically, of kids who grow up in two-parent married homes, right? Sure. And so I would almost say, hey, you act like, oh, we're just staying together for the kids. That's a good reason to stay together. Now, I'm not saying stay together for the kids and be miserable and treat each other like crap and have a terrible relationship. What, do some things to invest in the relationship and make it enjoyable. But I think there are some inherent benefits to it. But yeah, if someone don't want to be married, obviously they can go get a divorce. That's why,
right.
The irreconcilable differences of 1969 or whenever Reagan signed that in allowed people to roll out for any and every reason. So yeah, they can leave.
Right. You mentioned COVID and how you dealt with a couple that was together for 12 days for the first time consistently. Yeah. There was a high spike in separations and divorces during COVID. My explanation was the same thing you just basically touched on, is like you were together with people and you realized that you don't like to be with that person as much.
Right.
What do you think? Well, first of all, do you agree that there was a spike in divorces? And secondly, what do you think about the spike, and what are your thoughts and
I think
experience?
Yeah, and I didn't research this heavily, so this is not a scientifically.
Of course, we're not going to call you out on it, but tell us what
I'm assuming yours is research backed, but
nah,
yeah,
no. I'm just talking to 4 of my friends who got divorced.
yeah. I think there was some of both is what happened. I think what COVID did was COVID exasperated or maybe sped up whatever was there. So you had a lot of couples who were busy enough with work and avoiding each other and didn't have to be around each other and were miserable, but were busy enough and separate enough it didn't matter. And then when you're stuck in the house staring at each other every day, you're like, the hell if I'm doing this ever again. But I think there was a number of other couples who had good relationships And that time together strengthened the bond, because it's like, oh man, this is great. We, there's some stuff that we had been missing because we hadn't been with each other. And so I saw, just working with couples, I saw some of both level. I think anytime anytime there's pressure at that level, all it's going to do is, expose whatever might have been there, good or bad. And I think, COVID did that.
Well, yeah, I think you've hit it on the mark. I think if you survived COVID, like a 2 year, if you were in COVID where the states were locked down, I know you're in Texas where you guys didn't have, you're like, what's a quarantine?
Yeah, we don't even know what masks are, and we ride around on horses with guns and shoot.
But I mean, like, for people that had the 2 years, I felt like that's like 10 years. If you survived COVID, you're going to survive for a while. Like, I feel like
Sure.
it did show, it bolstered any relationship that was weak. It exposed weaknesses, but it also, if you survived, it's like, shit, you're gonna make it.
Yeah, if you got through that, because my wife even said to me at one point during the last couple of years, the word she used was suffocating. I was suffocating because I had been mostly out of the house, and then with what I'm doing now, most of it's online, whether it's counseling or classes or stuff like this, and so then I was home all the time. And she's one, like when you said I value my independence, and like she values her alone time, and she doesn't need as much or desire as much connection as I do. I love people, being around people. She's more introverted. So yeah, she was like, you're suffocating. Can you go do something? So we had to figure out a new rhythm where I try to get out of the house and go to coffee shops and work there instead of being at home. And
Right.
So yeah, that COVID will do some stuff to you for sure.
Now, let me ask you this. How did you get into this advocacy for marriage? Like, how did you get into it? What's your background?
I think it's one of those things that when you look back, you're like, it always kind of been there. And so over the years, I feel like we've just had groups, like even going back to dating in college when my wife and I were dating, we used to have groups of couples friends over. And back then this is really going to date me, right? We'd have like watch 90210 on TV together.
Sure.
And so I just felt like I've always been about gathering couples together and believe that community with other couples is healthy and good. And then over the years, just had, like, I was reflecting with somebody the other day, I remember one time my wife called me and was like, hey, I got a friend and her husband's been talking to the secretary and they're struggling and you need to call him. And I'm like, I'm like mid-20s. I'm like, what am I going to offer this guy? He's like 42. And I didn't want to do it, but I was like, I'll call him. And I made every excuse, like, hey man, my wife told me your wife called. And if there's anything I don't know what I'm going to do. Is there anything I can do? I'd be happy to, but don't feel any up. I was already giving him all the outs. Don't feel any up. He's like, yeah, how about breakfast tomorrow? And I was like, oh crap, So I think looking back, there's always been moments like that where I think I was just kind of willing to show up and say, hey, if I can help, I want to help and help you guys. And so that was the start of the journey. Then over the years, became a licensed counselor, and it's just kind of, I guess I've reluctantly slid into that space and,
Sure.
and then believe in it. I've seen, I guess for me, the biggest, there's some couples that are just, they're not willing to do what it takes, right? It just is,
Sure.
You can't force people to do it. But I think there's a big group of couples who with a few resources and some right people around them in a difficult season, can sustain and build something better than what they got. And so for me, I think it's fighting for all of those, just because I know the impact on kids and the environment. And, I believe systemically in marriage and the stability it provides and some of that kind of stuff. And we don't need to bore listeners with research on that, but there's positive benefits to it.
Well,
and
what
I believe
about
in that.
What was did you come from a family that was in a successful marriage looking back on it? Or do you think that because you saw, the cracks in a marriage, that's what kind of made you become an advocate?
My parents are great. My dad was in the Army for 26 years, but he's a counselor too, which is
what
I was like,
okay.
I was like, you know what I'm never going to do? Get in the military or be a counselor. So I stayed out of the military, but yeah, I ended up getting a counseling degree. So no, I saw a good, healthy communication modeled and a good relationship, and my passion is not born out of, the burden of my childhood, but more just a belief in this relationship. And then, like I said, we've been through difficulties in our relationship. And there's been many times over 28 years when you felt like throwing in the towel and going, this sucks. But also realizing those are seasons and I'm glad we're still in it fighting. So.
Are you ever in a situation when you're counseling couples and you just look at them and you're like, yeah, you guys shouldn't be together? Like, do you just say, fuck it? Like, it's just not worth it. Like, do you do that?
In my head,
Yeah.
in my head, but I try not to do it outwardly. Be like, you know what, you guys just suck. Just stop. I'm pretty direct. So I will say, stuff like, at some point you got to make a choice. Like, what you're doing now is not going to work. And if you're not willing to do what it takes, like, quit fooling each other. But I won't say like, hey, just quit. Because I also know if you're willing to make some adjustments that you can make a relationship with, and you can get back what the feelings that are lost and all that stuff, if you're willing to do the right things, consistently in time. So no, I think ethically as a counselor, I've got some obligation to give hope and not be like, oh yeah, I've never seen one like this. You guys are probably need to quit.
Well, hopefully one day I get to hear about that one from you. Well,
yeah.
Now, in recent times, there has been more accepted versions of marriage, open marriages, polyamory, and my position is, look, we've updated so many things in society. We've progressed or regressed. Some people will say we have different. We have gay marriage now. We have different genders. We have all this thing. And yet marriage has not been updated. While in the meantime, the life expectancy has grown significantly. When marriage was created, death do us part was like 5 years,
So feels a little more daunting now.
Now it's like 70 years. People are living past 80. My parents are in their 80s. So
yeah.
What do you say about polyamory? What do you think is that something that you advocate for, or you think is something that can help a marriage or different?
I think if I think part of our problem in life is an unwillingness to be logically and statistically honest with ourselves, right? There's polyamory doesn't work.
Okay.
Now there's people that will tell you, oh no, I know, my third cousin, the three of them live together and they're way more happy. And I know 3 heterosexual divorced couples. But if you look at the stability of those things, they just don't prove themselves out. Similar to gay marriage. Do I think that gay people can have the same feelings and love each other the same and treat each other? Absolutely. You can't quantify that.
Right.
But places like Sweden, where gay marriage and civil unions and different stuff has been available over the years, they don't have the same success rate as men, women. If you look statistically, again, I'm not talking morality, I'm not talking emotionality. I'm just saying statistically, like civil unions, they're easier to get into and out of. They're less stable than people who get into marriage. So what I would say about polyamory, since you asked that question, is no, we've all watched Sister Wives and these other shows, and if we're statistically honest, and people will be honest, giving personal feedback on them, those relationships rarely, if ever, work because of the relational dynamics. Like, it's impossible not to have jealousy. It's impossible not to at times, because sex is relational. Now we've made sex not relational, and it's hookups, but sex has a relational component. That's why our emotions get tied in. It's just part of nature. We got chemicals running in the brain when we have orgasms. And so I think it's impossible to not complicate the relationship with outside relationships. So what I would say is, can people do whatever they want? Absolutely. But if we're honest with what seems to have the greatest success rate and stability, it seems to be kind of the traditional marriage that's been around forever. Now we've complicated it, but
well, you say that, but isn't the success rate 50%? Like, isn't
people
50%?
have thrown that out? Research that I've really dug into, that low 40s is been kind of, but yeah, people say,
so how successful is that? I mean, there's got to be,
it's 50%. It's a coin flip. But what I'm saying is, if you want to compare that to, say, polyamorous relationships, they're going to have a much higher failure rate, so to speak.
Right. Well, what about the fact that, why can't we improve? If we look at the statistics, right? If we look at the marriages that don't work, why can't, and I know why, my answer to this is why we don't have a contract relationship where it's like a 7-year or a 10-year relationship, renewable
little
contract.
renewal or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the reason why we don't have it is because the divorce lawyers and the lobby they'd go nuts. But like that, you have a traditional marriage, you're committed to someone, but you evolve as society, you evolve as a human every 5-7 years, 10 years,
Sure.
you change. Why can't we do something like that? Why does that something that's so unethical or not accepted?
Yeah. I mean, are people saying it's unethical or
I
unacceptable?
don't
I'm sure
know.
people could probably
Would that be
sign up for
something?
those if they wanted.
Is that something you would think is a possible approach to updating marriage? Do you think that?
I think again, I'm a fan of till death do us part level of commitment. Obviously, there's all kinds of mess in there, right? Who I was at 25 and who I am at 48 are different people. So there's consistent adjustments over the life of the thing. You know, if I started over now and married now, you'd probably be looking for, you wouldn't be looking for someone who's a good mother because you're done with those years, and
Right.
you know what I'm saying. So there would be, but again, I think anything that's contractual, that it adds a level of performance to a relationship.
Right. Which is a
And
good
when
thing.
there's performance, now we are keeping score. We're keeping track. It's this whole idea of, I'd have a YouTube video that said, why fairness doesn't work in relationships, right? Which is, I'll do for you if you do for me, and if you don't do for me, I'm not going to do back for you. And when you start getting in that contractual performance relationship, other things become priority other than the commitment of the relationship, which is now I'm keeping track of what you, and nobody does that honestly. I overweight my contributions and probably underestimate, my spouse's contribution. And so yeah, go ahead.
But then there's an element of free will that, like, some people have 7-year, like, if you want it to work, that's where you can negotiate, kind of like the NFL. Be like, okay, we're in a contract year. If you want to stay together, I need you to, help with the dishes more. These are the things that I need from you. And then the other side will go, okay, that's cool. But, on Fridays, I want to have my friends over and I need you to get out of the house or go to a coffee shop. Like, those are the kind of things that I think would improve a marriage. I think if you want it to work, obviously counseling is a great response. This is stuff that can be resolved through counseling, but a lot of people might just be like, shit, if it's written down, then a lot of people will do it. I don't know. I think it can only improve. I'd get married if it was a 7-year contract. It's less daunting.
Yeah, find somebody who wants to do that, and you'll be perfect. Because I think you could. Can people do that? Yes, absolutely. They could go do that. I think you could also do that in a marriage where you're saying we're committing for life, but we should be reviewing regularly in different seasons. What do you need from me in this season? What are you passionate about? How do we? Because I think part of my goal is, well, I think primarily my goal should be that my wife becomes the best she can be. What are you passionate about? What do you want to do in this season? How can I support you in this season? How can I help you become all you want to be? And you do have to renegotiate that. I mean, there's seasons when we have 3 girls when they were little and my wife needed my help, at bath time and bedtime. There was other seasons where my help was best in the morning getting them off to school. There's and so you always are renegotiating in a relationship. Hey, here's where I'm at. This is what I'm not enjoying. This is what I am enjoying. This is what I want more of and less of. So for me, my philosophy of marriage is a lifelong process of doing that anyway, like a garden of feeding and weeding. What are the things that cause our relationship to grow and us to thrive? And let's make sure we're intentional with that. What are the things that are causing disconnection and frustration and hurt and pain? Let's weed those. And it's just this never ending weeding and feeding, right? So I think you're I would say you're almost doing what you described anyway, but not from a standpoint of like, hey man, you do these 3 things or I'm out. Because then if there's something, there's safety and security in the mentality of I'm here and I got you.
Right.
that takes away the fear and insecurity of, did I perform enough? Did I do everything right? If I don't do everything right, then they're going to leave me, or they're going to cheat on me, or that kind of mentality, I believe, creates a unstable relationship, because I never know if I've done enough. And right. I never know if I'm going to wake up tomorrow and the person's going to decide that what we agreed upon or what we value, they no longer value, and they're out. And so for me, I think it's a less stable relationship. But there might be some people that's like, no, we love it because this is what we both need to stay engaged. Otherwise, we get lazy and we stop working at it, and we just like, I got you, I don't have to do anything more. So there may be some people it works for.
Maybe that's like the, you know, positive or negative reinforcement people need, like an ultimatum to make something work. And that's what's one way we can improve marriage and keep it, you know, traditional in the sense, you know, maybe that's one answer.
So maybe it's a 7-year contract. So you may need it, because the 7-year itch, right, is when most people bow out. So maybe you need like the 6-year contract before we start getting the itch. We can reevaluate.
See, that's a good. I'm going to start saying 6-year to because the contract year would be the 7-year itch. So
there you go. Or maybe like sports, they seem to, NFL seems to be the 4 to 5 year contract. So maybe that's and then your contract year, man, you like cooking dinner, mowing the lawn, you're like killing it so you can re-up, right?
Right. Well, you mentioned you know, infidelity, and you said something about statistically and logistically honest. If we're being statistically and logistically honest, and we believe in the science, you know, humans and mammals are not monogamous people. For years, there's a book called Sex at Dawn where they describe, where they say essentially, they were like, oh, well, penguins are monogamous. So they were trying to find an example of where a mammal was monogamous, and it doesn't exist. So what you're doing in a marriage is you're creating something that's not natural, for good or bad. I'm not putting a stamp on that, but what do you say about that in terms of if we are being honest with ourselves? And I feel like whether someone doesn't act on infidelity in a marriage because of their marriage, the fact that some people would argue that you're still kind of cheating because you're thinking about it, or you have a work wife or something that you really talk to but you don't tell your wife about. What do you think about all that stuff and how that complicates it kind of like creates this facade of a healthy relationship when in reality it's probably not a good marriage?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the whole it's not natural, is it? I mean, one, it's funny to me that people love to go to the animal kingdom when we start talking about sex, like, you know, hey, these animals are homosexual, or these, nobody's monogamous. And like, do you want to compare you know, I don't eat my own crap, and, you know, I don't lick my balls and, you know, stuff that, so I'm like, you know, I'm not really sure that.
But you would if you could. You would if you could.
that you never know. Yeah, that human beings, I'm not sure I want to compare myself to the animal kingdom. So let me say there. So I would say that is it natural or is it not natural? I could make a case for it. If you look at so many positives out of marriage, right, where, you know, people live longer, men make more, married men make more money than single men. Like, there's so many health, wealth, stabilizing aspects to the marriage between man and woman. It would be hard for me to say, be honest and say, hey man, I don't think it's natural. I think we've idolized sex in this culture. Obviously we give freedom in the sexual arena and treat it differently than any other aspect of life, right?
Well, especially now, you know, you and I are a generation where porn was difficult to find, whereas these people under 25, porn was readily available to everyone, and as a result, sex has been, you know, it's just a different world out there.
Yeah, you and I had to risk like our best friend's dad seeing us at 7-Eleven asking for the hustler behind the thing, be like, oh, nobody walks in.
Right. It was a lot more difficult. And now sex is more open. People are more, for better or for worse, they're open to the idea of just animal instincts of sex without
sure. And you know, all the gender conversations and gender fluidity and transgender and all. That's why I say we apply a different set of rules to sexuality than we do everywhere else in life, right? You can't identify as a different age or different race or anything else. Mental health wise, if we don't tell anorexics or schizophrenics to listen to the voices and
Right.
but when it's in the area of gender, it is all about feeling and how we feel. But no, I mean, again, I'm going to come back to the idea that we all have a foundation and a worldview, and so I guess I wouldn't subscribe to the worldview that we're animalistic and we were not supposed to be monogamous, and that's false, and marriage somehow puts us in. I think we've so idolized sex that it's become such an animal that I'm not sure we even know what healthy sexuality is anymore, right? It's like,
right.
If left to ourselves, will we come up with so many of the nuances and perversions that have happened in the world around sex trafficking and all this stuff. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not sure we'll ever settle the debate of whether we were supposed to be monogamous or it's unnatural. But yeah, if you want to have sex with a bunch of people, marriage is not conducive to that.
Well, what about the fact that, even if you don't act on it, like there's still those thoughts, right? You as
Sure.
a man, you see, back in our day, it was Baywatch. You watch that show, you have lust in your heart or whatever.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
and we're in marriage, you are to suppress that, and that's the right thing to do. But where is the line? Obviously, if you act on it, that's infidelity. But is it infidelity if you have someone at work that you have an emotional connection, right? You tell them all your feelings. You don't tell your husband about it. Isn't that kind of the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I would call that an emotional affair. I think when you think about infidelity in general would be a betrayal of the commitment that you've made to each other. So yeah, I think if you're I call it outsourcing, right? I think there's some things in marriage you can outsource, right? Like I think some couples are best friends and that's fantastic. And I think there's other couples where they don't have enough like interest to be a best friend. They may outsource you have some people that like, I love people and interacting with people more than my wife. So am I going to require her to come out with me every time I go out and do all the stuff I want to do? No, that's draining to her. So I think I can outsource some of those needs in a healthy way. I got friendships, but I can do it in an unhealthy way, right? Where what you said, I'm having the emotional connection level conversations that my marriage needs for us to be connected, but I'm giving those to somebody else. And it's going to be easier to do that because let's be honest, the people outside your marriage are going to affirm everything you say and never give you pushback. And right, if I go to my wife and say, hey, I'm quitting my job tomorrow, I'm starting a new service, I want to groom 3-legged dogs, I feel like it's a big need out there, she's going to be like, the hell you are? Well, who's paying the mortgage? If I tell Susie at work, she's going to be like, oh, you have such a good heart, you love dogs, you're such a so that's why many times I think comparison is killing a lot of marriages, because we're comparing the false reality of an outside relationship, an affair. Even the greatest marriage can't compare to an affair. All you're doing is taking out the best parts of a relationship and going, that's all we do. We don't have to argue about bills or kids or anything. And so I think, that comparison, often kills us, because it's like, that's not reality, man. Those people affirm everything.
Well, I didn't get you to budge on this show, and
maybe the next one you'll finally bring. Next show, I'll be like, "Hey, dude, I've been listening to your podcast. I left my wife. I love singleness."
That'll be awesome. No, I'm just kidding, Eric. I think you brought a lot of stuff to our attention. I'm sure I'm going to have some more questions from listeners, so we're going to probably have to bring you back and have you answer all those and grill you a little more. In the meantime, we're out of time. Eric, where can people find out more about you, your services, and more about?
I think my website's the easiest place, alteredmarriage.com. It's spelled ALTARED, marriage.com. And if you do /gift, I've got a free guide. It's called the Dater's Manifesto for those daters. And then I got a relationship rhythm guide for anybody in a relationship, just to help you get a good rhythm going in your relationship. So I've got some free resources on there, but they can check out, all the things I do on that website.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate what you brought to the table. You didn't change my mind, but we had a healthy conversation. And thank you all for listening to another edition of Singles Only Podcast.
But I'm still